Hey guys, this is a recording that kind of encapsulates the beginning of my relationship with Derek. The background of this was that Derek and I were going back and forth arguing on social media, and I basically dared him to come on the show and debate with me my feelings about Marathon Investigation, and he called me on my bluff. He came on, we had a long conversation that a lot of people thought was very productive, very respectful, and that kind of brought up both sides of the argument. So what we wanted to do is just drop this episode in the feed so that you guys could listen to it. So in its entirety, the following is one episode of my podcast, 10 Junk Miles. And while you're here, if you want to support the Marathon Investigation podcast, consider making a donation on Patreon. It's this place where you can donate any amount you want per month, or you can make a one-time donation. A lot of people just, they drop $1, $2, $3 a month, and it helps pay for the show, pay for the costs, gives back a little bit to the cause, and we really, really appreciate it. Think of it as like if you, ran into one of us at a coffee shop, would you buy us a cup of coffee? And if you got a few extra bucks and you're inclined, go ahead and do it. And if you don't, and you need the money to pay your rent, well, then obviously just keep it for yourself. But without any further delay, here is Derek and Scott arguing on 10 Junk Miles.
Hello, this is Derek.
Hey, Derek, this is Scotty Coomer and 10 Junk Miles. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Excellent. Is this a good time? Are you available? Everything's good?
Yep, this is good.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, I just wanted to say a few things. First, what my goal is in talking to you. And the first goal is to get to know you a little bit as a person, hear your story, how this Marathon Investigation came apart, things like that. And then at the end of it, to kind of discuss the things and the objections or the differences of opinion that we may have. And I want to do it in a way where when we're all done, hopefully, looking back, you might disagree with me, but you might see where I'm coming from at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. And the other thing is, do you have like a hard out where you have to be done by a certain time?
No, I'm pretty good. How long do you think it'll take?
I don't know. These things, sometimes they free flow. If you and I find that we have a mutual love of canoeing, it could be 3 hours. If if I piss you off in 5 minutes.
I do have the. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll check it about an hour.
All right. So
but it's not. It could be hour 5 all the time, but that's not. Yeah.
Perfect.
Crazy.
So, Derek, how old are you, and where are you from?
From Cincinnati, Ohio. Actually, I grew up in Cleveland, area now.
Okay. And are you yourself a runner?
Not so much anymore. Although I've started to back up, but I've run 10 marathons and did 2 24-hour races. The last one basically corresponds to when I started having kids. So I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old right now. So that was kind of when the marathon and the racing stopped. I still, I was, but not as much racing. And
then what do you do for like real work in your spare time, or what's your career or your career path?
Yeah, the career, up through last week was as a business analyst. My job got eliminated last week, so after we had our conversations on the Facebook. So yeah, but it's I had a sales and background and a business analyst background. So kind of the analytics and stuff's kind of what drives me and what I like doing, which kind of led to the Marathon Investigation.
But not like a specific background in training or fitness or anything like that. It's more based on the business and the statistics part of it.
Right.
Awesome. And what kind of runner were you? Were you like a Boston style runner? Were you mid pack, back of the pack? What was your running like?
Definitely back of the pack. Kind of what you think of on the typical. Basically, I couldn't run a mile, and I just told myself I was going to run a marathon 3 months down the road, and so I trained the best I could, and I did it in about 5 hours, a little over, and that's kind of where I stuck. And then at some point, I loved doing the marathons, but I didn't my training wasn't as good as it should be. So I did a lot of marathons that were all over 5 hours. So no, Boston was never in my sights.
And did you come to running later in life, or were you like a track runner in high school and college or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. Yeah, it was later in life. I was in my I guess in my 30s at that point.
So you're what we would all kind of affectionately call a hobby jogger who picked it up in the middle ages.
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And I know this is kind of an out of order question, but were you ever the victim of a cheater or accused of cheating or anything like that early on in your life as like an impetus for this?
No, not at all. The impetus for that was just kind of follow. And when I started running, I'd be following all the message boards, getting everything I can. And I just kind of came across some of the cheating stories on Let's Run and everywhere else. And so I kind of got interested in it, from kind of following those stories, like the Kip Litton, if you're familiar with him and whatnot.
And so was that Let's Run is where you originally started to get into the seeing the stories?
I think I used to be on, gosh, it was, the Running Ahead Now, and I think before that it was Cool Running. So I followed those, and then someone linked the story on the Kip Litton. I was just fascinated by that whole story and how he got away with it, and how he never really was truly caught. So that kind of piqued my interest initially, as far as knowing that there's people cheating at marathons at that level.
And just for the listeners, because someone told me this story this weekend, actually, my friend Matt Condren did. Can you just give us like the bullet of the Kip story?
Kip Litton, and there's a lot to it, and it's a little bit of an older story, but he had created a website, and he stated he had a goal of running sub 3 hour marathons in all 50 states. And as he started posting those times, people who raced against him were suspicious, because they didn't recognize him. Hey, who's this guy from out of town? Or or I've never seen this guy before. So that's where it started kind of raising suspicions. And then once they kind of got into those suspicions got onto the, internet, forums and whatnot, people would be looking at photos and whatnot, and they would see either missing splits, or he'd have outfit changes in the middle of races, and just a lot of odd stuff. And kind of like the culmination of it almost was, it was determined that he actually created his own marathon. It was listed on Marathon Guide. He had, fake results on there and whatnot, and he was in the results and, himself, and, he had a fake email address with a fake race director, and the contact actually went to him. So it was just truly fascinating stuff. And he still never admits to cheating, even though it's obvious to everybody. But it's, he's been qualified from a number of races, but there's a lot of cases. I mean, he has a sub 3 in Boston, which no one thinks he's capable of, but no one could figure out how he would have cheated either. So that's very interesting.
So at some point, this guy he made up not only his result, but the race, all the other participants. He made up the entire race.
Yeah, the West Wyoming Marathon he made up, and there's so it's kind of that's kind of like that's the top. I mean, I'll give him credit for the guts, but and also he was was supposed to be raising money for charity and whatnot, and people questioned that. I never got into it. I might have looked through the information, but there are so many people, and there was a guy, kind of my predecessor, he created a blog on Kip Litton, and I thought this guy was nuts when he created a blog just on that and had all kinds of detail. I thought he was going overboard, but in retrospect, he was kind of he kind of started it all.
What year was that the Kip?
Oh my gosh, that had to be about 8-10 years ago when he was running. So yeah, so it's probably close to 10 years now when he was actually, running. People were investigation went on for people were looking into him, and even after he stopped racing, once it was kind of out there, then he stopped entering races.
So that was the first thing that kind of piqued your interest in this concept of people that are cheating in races.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And it was funny because what kind of got me going, down this path was, a few years ago thinking, hey, I hadn't heard, I hadn't looked for a while. I'm like, I haven't heard. I wonder if anything new happened with Kip Litton. So I went onto the Let's Run board, and the top thread was Mike Rossi. With
right.
Viral Marathon Dad, that one. So I just happened upon that, looking to see if there's anything new on Kip Litton, and I stumbled across that Mike Rossi thread on the Let's Run board. That's where it really kind of led to the creation of the site.
And the Mike Rossi, just so that everybody knows, this is the guy. This is the Transcon.
No, Mike Rossi. He was the one. He was the dad that qualified for Boston. He took his kids out of school.
Oh, right.
And he wrote the.
He got mad at the teacher.
He wrote a letter to the principal because the absence was unexcused. I mean, he got the form letter from the school. If you have kids, you know that whenever your kids are out of school for a family vacation or whatever, you get this letters about, how important attendance is. And I got one of those for my kindergartner 2 weeks into kindergarten. We went on vacation. So it's a standard letter. But he posted it on social media, never did actually mail it to her saying, hey, my kids learned more in Boston than they would have learned in a month at school or whatever it was. And that got picked up that went viral, that letter. A lot of people giving him credit, and he was on the Today Show, and it just went everywhere. Well, there were people who were suspicious of his qualifying time, and that's kind of, what led to it. And there was just way more investigation than was necessary into him. But at that race, it was the Lehigh Valley Marathon. There's no intermediate timing mats, so all I had to go by was his lack of photos. So people looked at every single runner's photos, and turns out he's the only runner without a photo on the course. And his time was way faster than what he had ever run in the past. And so there was all that type of evidence there. So I was fascinated by the lengths that people were going to expose this guy who, one person who cheated to do Boston. And that's what kind of led me down the path to see how many others there were.
But no, this guy, he like brought it on himself to some extent. Like the cheating allegations didn't come until after the righteous letter to the principal, right?
Right. I think there are a couple local runners who were suspicious of his time. I saw emails like before that ever came. Then once it went viral, that kind of brought out everybody. And there were a lot of. I don't think there were a lot of people who didn't care for him even before this. And so this was kind of an opportunity for other people to kind of dig in and pile on. So that was my initial thought. I'm like, wow, this is one guy who cheated. Why do we care so much about him? A lot of it was personal, amongst some of the people. And so I'm like, well, how many more Mike Rossis are out there? So that's why I started looking.
Right, and that Mike Rossi thread, that was epic. I mean, there was who was that guy? Rob Young, the Transcron guy. That one was similar.
That one went. Yeah, that one went crazy. It didn't last as long. Mike Rossi was going strong for a couple of years, so they shut it down. The Rob Young, and I was kind of aware of that, but early on, but I didn't do a whole lot of work on the Transcon guy. It was obvious, that he cheated. I wrote about him a couple times, just reporting what happened. But I didn't do much of that investigation myself. But that was another one. It was obvious. I mean, he was spotted riding in the van, and there's all kinds of data showing that he didn't really, wasn't really competing there.
No,
at the Transcon.
At the point that you're becoming interested in the concept of cheating in marathons, are you still running at that time, or is you're running over, or are you still running now?
Yeah, I'm still running. Actually, I have a goal of trying to do a marathon this fall, so I've been picking it back up. Now I have more time since right now I don't have a full-time job, so it's a good. So I've started running with the goal of either doing a 24-hour race or a marathon in this fall. So so I've been running. I haven't raced. Again, it's been 6 years since I did North Coast 24-hour race, and it's about 6 years ago or so. So I was running but not racing.
Okay, and so you were still watching the Let's Run message boards. Why?
Like I said, I hadn't been on it forever. I just kind of one day was curious. Hey, I wonder if Kip Whitten did anything. Went and checked and saw the Mike Rossi thread and kind of got sucked into that. And then really what happened, I find the post on there where I did. I said, well, how many more people actually cheat in marathons? So I pulled up just a random race result where there was, where the results were all on one page, which showed the splits and everything. And I found somebody immediately who had missed the split. It was at the Fort Lauderdale A1A marathon. A woman who missed a split. It was a Boston qualifying time. And it was kind of, I say if this case, if that one would have been so boring, I may have just, it may not have piqued my interest. But she had photos on social media and actually took a selfie of herself at the 20-mile mark where she had, so I was able to get another split, and it just showed that time was impossible. And as it turns out, she did cut the course. She eventually admitted it. She claimed she had a medical issue and had amnesia and didn't remember cutting the course. Must have, come out of it and turned the wrong way. And it was, it was a big story, but again, I found somebody. It took like 5 minutes for me pulling up results to find somebody who I believe cheated. So there was a thread started on her. I think I started the thread on her. And
on Let's Run?
on Let's Run, and they quickly deleted it.
Why?
And they've never really quite said, because they're very inconsistent. And I
Yes.
now I kind of understand. Hey, her name was in there. She didn't make herself public like Mike Rossi did. So I kind of understand it more than maybe I did at that point. But they would never. So we never knew if something was being written about and investigated when they were going to delete the thread. So someone said, hey, someone should start their own blog just to kind of keep this information. And so that's where well, what the hell? So that's why I just kind of did that.
And was she your first blog post?
She was, yeah. She was first blog post. And actually, I've taken it down since. Once I started getting some more exposure, I had a lot of posts about kind of random people, where more it was just kind of no one else. Very few people were looking at the blog. I was kind of using it as a way to put the information on. If I emailed a race director about a result I wanted them to review, I'd link them to the blog. So again, I was getting very, few views or anything. But then once, I started wrote a post that got some attention that, without all people's information there from articles I did a year prior, I archived some of those. So you won't find an article on her anymore. But yeah, that was the very first one I wrote. And so there were a lot of ones that were, it was people who, cheated for Boston, and I usually stuck to Boston qualifying times. But I there was a lot more information in those posts than what I would do and something I would write today.
Let's back up though. Did you have a blog before all this? Were you a blogger?
No.
Were you in social media?
Never.
Anything like that?
No, never. I had no idea. So really it was that was my first blog I ever created, was the Marathon Investigation blog.
And with this woman?
That was the first post.
Was it called Marathon Investigation then too?
Yeah, I think it was Marathon Cheat at blogspot.com or whatever it was. Again, it was.
What do you know, roughly what month, year that was?
I believe that was in May of 2015.
Okay. And so why at that point in time did you decide, because at the time that you made the blog, had she already admitted that she cheated and all that, or was it still she contesting it still?
She was still contesting it, although the evidence for that one, the evidence was it was really undeniable. But no, she was actually at that point she may have never even been. Yeah, I think she did respond at that point. So she was contesting it at that point.
And then just walk me through the procedure for that one. And I know it's probably different today, but with that blog, did you reach out to her before you did the blog and say, I'm doing this blog? Did you ask for comments for the blog, or what did you do?
Yeah, actually, I did reach out for her through Facebook, did a friend request. She accepted, but as that was being posted on Let's Run at the same time, then she kind of, then she shut down. So then she's, unfriended me. I don't think she ever blocked me. So initially, I did, attempt to reach out to her. I think another Let's Run user did reach out to her, where she had denied the cheating. And then, but once that's when it started going on Let's Run, where she kind of unfriended and then stopped making comment.
Did you reach out to her with the purpose of getting her side of the story, or getting her to give herself up, or just
pretty much just getting her side of the story. Say, hey, we know ahead of time what happened. Hey, I showed this. I can't remember how the exact communication went with her. It's been a little over 2 years now, but that was my intent. Was, hey, what happened here? Did you cheat? Did you just cut the course? Were you tired or whatever? But everything in her social media showed that she did that with the intention to qualify for Boston.
And at the time that you're doing this, you definitely cannot have a vision that you're going to build this big website and it's going to have this following. Did you set, when I started my podcast, I was like, well, maybe 20 or 30 of my friends are going to listen to this and it'll be cool, but I wasn't thinking big picture. Were you thinking at all about the big picture, or were you just
at that point?
Yeah.
No, not at that point. At that point, when I started thinking, okay, this is going to be bigger, that didn't come till probably 6 months later. And I can kind of walk you through the progression.
But what was the incentive for making the blog post? Who was your audience? Who was following you? Or was it going to be the Let's Run crowd could see it? Or
Yeah, that was pretty much it. It's hey, I think at that point I even had a page for tips. Hey, because, a lot of that was happening on Let's Run, but then randomly, hey, I'm interested in this person, they get deleted. So it's just kind of a clear, I think the wording was, hey, it's a clearinghouse, if you're suspect somebody, post them here, just so there's some information there so people can investigate. So it's really going to be more kind of a group effort type thing. Hey, put the information there and then people can comment, with what they find, similar to what Let's Run was doing with Mike Rossi and what they had done with others. But again, without worrying about, moderators, pulling all the information down. Yeah.
So I don't want to put words in your
first post.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was it kind of like seeing as though the Let's Run's taking this down, and it's clear that people are interested in this and want to talk about it. I'm going to put it here. If you guys want to follow this story, you can follow it over here.
Not exactly. Again, it was just more not, and I was even trying to still go through Let's Run. Like I would post on Let's Run, Let's Run threads, but it was just more about the fear of it, being deleted. I mean, there were a number of times where threads on cheaters, they let some of them go and some of them get deleted 5 pages in and all that information's, gone. So it was just more kind of a way to keep the information. And yeah, I figured the audience would be the Let's Run crowd.
And so you wanted the Let's Run crowd to have a place where they could, or people that were interested in those types of stories to have a place where they could follow them if they got deleted from Let's Run.
Right. Yeah, I really didn't think it'd go, beyond Let's Run. I mean, I wasn't posting it into the other Facebook groups or anything at that point. I think occasionally I might have shared articles on Reddit, but again,
is there a Reddit just for the Marathon Investigation?
It was primarily Let's Run readers. Wasn't doing anything to advertise the site or make people aware of the site at that point.
Okay, so there was no monetization at all at that point.
No, none whatsoever.
And do you have any idea, like, how many people were following it? Just like ballpark? Was it tens? Was it 100? Was it hundreds, thousands? What?
I think it was tens. I was getting maybe 15, 20 hits a day or something, depending. And if I wrote an article and posted a link to it in Let's Run, then maybe I'd get 100 views in a day and I'd be happy. Yeah, I mean, it was that little.
Okay. And so then when do you decide, what's the, and I don't want to talk about people by their last name at all. You can just use first name. But what's the next thing that happened after that in terms of the development of the Marathon Investigation?
Really, it was kind of two things kind of happening at once. Again, as I was kind of going through, looking at all these different, cases, and I'm like, okay, all these people, yeah, it looks like they cheated. They have fast times, but how many people actually cheat and actually use that time to actually register for Boston? Because I'm like, if these people aren't registering for Boston, it doesn't really matter.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit. We have to back up a little bit. I didn't hear what you just said at all.
Okay, let's move on. All right. Now?
Yeah, pretty good right now.
So I forget what the last question was now.
We're just trying to put together what happened next, because it seems to me like the story is you found this late, you just thought, well, hey, why don't I go look? And you kind of audited one random marathon, saw one glaring cheater, and then because they took it down, Let's Run, you started a blog, and I'm like, so now what? Did you decide then I'm going to keep doing this, or what did you do?
Yeah, no, and I kept it up, and I would go without. I'd post every now and then, or somebody posted, from Let's Run, something came up, I'd kind of look into it and post about it. Not really anybody was looking at it. Where it kind of started to blow up was after I could decided to say, okay, yeah, I'm finding a lot of people who cheat with these Boston qualifying times, but how many of these people are actually registering for Boston? So at that point, there was an offshoot of the Let's Run group, on Facebook. So there was a Facebook group, of a small number of people who were interested in the Mike Rossi case and cheating in general. So I posted in there that I wanted to somehow look at the Boston results to try to figure out what runners may have in their qualifier. See if it's really an issue. If people are cheating for these fast times, but they're not using those as qualifying times, is it that big of a deal? So once I started kind of working on that project, and at that point, other people were helping, and I kind of came up with methods to prioritize a review of results, and I was finding a lot of people who often using bogus times. One of the members of that group had been in contact with the Runner's World reporter who contacted me and was interested in the project. So that's when it kind of, when I started talking to them and knew they were article, that's when I, kind of thought there may be a bigger audience for this kind of thing.
So let me,
and still at that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just let me ask you a quick question. So these people that are in the the Mike Rossi thing, the people that are in the Let's Run, the Facebook group, and all that, from the discussion that we had on Facebook, it's clear that there's a lot of people with a lot of differing kind of opinions on the subject and all around it. And I'm wondering, do you recall, or do you have can you describe it all? Who are the people that are really into this? Who are those people generally? Or is it just random?
Yeah, yeah. Too with that initial group, you had the people who were obsessed with Mike Rossi. Some from a personal level, I mean, literally, you wouldn't believe it. It's humorous. People who had beefs with him from his wedding DJ business. So you had people who were just obsessed with Mike Rossi. It's like eventually those Boston, exception of me, probably, it's mostly people who strive to run Boston and who have run Boston. So it's pretty good runners. Again, like it was a small, maybe a half dozen people who were invested in it, but it's successful people, good runners and, people who run Boston who just didn't like when people cheated.
Okay.
So it's not the basement dwellers as they say. It wasn't that at all. And so those were, the people interested. So when I started talking to the runners, really at that point, I did that initial Facebook post, say, hey, how many people actually cheat to enter Boston? What the thought was, hey, if we find maybe there's 50 of them, maybe we find 100 in the sample we look at, maybe that would get, the BAA's attention. That just may get some attention, let them know it's not a small problem. And so again, Runner's World, found out about it through another member of that group. I think he was talking with that member regarding Mike Rossi and mentioned me. So I was talking to Kid at Runner's World, and then with the intention of they would do an article on my methods leading up to the 2016 Boston Marathon. So they would post an article just before that. Then in the meantime, as that came up, I actually did get, somebody who was aware of my blog. Well, I got a tip on, there was this blogger, Gia, who was used a friend's bib to enter Boston enter the 2016 Boston Marathon. This woman was aware of it. So, I got that. I didn't think a whole lot of it. 'Cause again, I had 40 more people who did the same thing. But then this blogger, turns out this woman sending information to BAA, she got banned from Boston for life. And she wrote a post saying that she got banned because she gave her bib away. But really, she got banned because when she gave her bib away to her friend was very fast. Her friend ran a Boston qualifying time and qualified Gia to run the next year. So she used someone else's time. And that's why she got banned. So
hold on one second. We're kind of losing you again for some reason. So the girl, I don't know if you're moving around or if you got just a bad...
No, I'm just staying put.
Maybe I should try. Should I try calling you back maybe? Because you keep fading in and out.
Yeah, and I hear you perfectly fine. We can try that.
Let me just call you right back and see if it improves. 1 second.
Okay.
Calling him back. So far, so good, eh? Not a lot of drama. We'll see.
Hello?
Hey, we'll see if this works a little better because you were just kind of fading in and out. So Gia, somebody ran using her bib and then qualified for Boston, I think is what you had said.
Right. And so Gia used her friend's time to run Boston the following year. She was a very popular blogger. Oh, now you're back.
Did
you want to try Skype? I don't know if that would be any. Yeah, I'm not. It's weird, but yeah, I'm seeing them get went down to one bar, and I'm like, it's not like I'm out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So. Well, let's just keep going and see. We can always edit a little bit to make it better. So Gia, Gia went.
So basically, Gia, she used her friend's time that her friend running with her bib in 2015 Boston Marathon to enter the 2016 Boston Marathon herself. So. If that makes sense.
And then did you do an article about her?
Yeah, I just did a quick article because she wrote her apology and she was getting a lot of sympathy from her friends saying, well, you shouldn't have been banned for life for giving your bib away. And so I just did a very quick article, showing that time to try to run herself. So I just did that, and I never expected it to get much attention. And that post went pretty viral, the article. So that. Really the first time anything got any attention. That's the first time any newspaper or news picked up anything I wrote. And again, that was maybe 2 weeks before the Runner's World article was coming out. And that actually was the first time prior to the Runner's World article was when I first put up advertisements on my site. Because I know you asked about monetization before. So put up the Google AdWords, right around Boston, 2016. So that's the first time, I did anything to make any money from the site was at that point. So it was about
this is the Google AdSense?
Yes, AdSense. Sorry,
okay.
I said AdWords. Yeah. So that's the first time I had any kind of banner ads or anything on the blog was in April of 2016.
And just to be clear, Boston prohibits transferring bibs, swapping bibs, or running with someone else's bib.
Right, exactly. There's no deferrals or anything, so it's pretty much, you run it the year, you qualify under your own name, and that's it.
So is this kind of when you realize that this could be something that you could, do more often, or, not necessarily make a living off of, but this, like a side hobby?
Yeah, that's again, when I first started getting attention, when I started getting interest from, saw that national newspapers picked up the stories and stuff, I was like, wow, and I knew Runner's World, anything, get some exposure, people will be aware. And then, but then when I wrote that blog without any prior exposure and it got attention, that's when I realized that, that there was an interest in this.
When was the first time that anyone ever posed any kind of an objection to what you were doing?
It was probably that, or probably that GIA article. Really, there was always some, but yeah, I can't even say that for sure. So yeah, there's always objections. I was actually expecting, when the Runner's World article came out on my process for, catching the Boston qualifier cheaters, I expected it to be a lot more mixed. I expected maybe like 50-50. But people are reading that. I saw that more were supportive of me than I expected. I expected it to be more mixed than what it was.
All right. So at that point in time, then you start blogging regularly, and it's not just limited to people that cheat in Boston, or even cheaters for that matter. It's all kinds of issues related to running.
Yeah, and that's been a little more recent. When I was that probably from like April, from when I did that, through pretty much the end of last year, it was pretty much still, I'd say it was 90% of people cheating for Boston. And then it was probably starting this year where I ventured off into some different topics, because, again, there was another post, and then really after I know I'm jumping around here, I apologize.
That's fine.
But even after that Runner's World, article that, that got, initial kick, and I was, writing about, after Boston, there was plenty to write about, in 2016. And then there was a lull where I was, maybe writing a couple articles a month, and it was kind of back to a little bit of what it was before. And then I wrote an article in December of last year about the Honolulu Marathon, where there's just a number of people who apparently cut the course, and for whatever reason that got a lot of attention. I was doing interviews with Honolulu TV and whatnot, and there was an objection. The race director objected to my work, in that case. So that may have added a little bit to it. So
what was his objection?
His objection was, and I tried to with the article, just so, hey, people are, people cheated every race. I wasn't even blaming the race at that point. And so I just said, hey, there's this number of runners, who I found with Boston qualifying times who appear to have cut the course. And I didn't name the runners. I think I may have had the photos on there, but it wasn't, blaming the race for that, because that happens. And then, and his objection was, well, we would have found these on our own, Derek's not affiliated, has no standing to make these statements or whatnot. So then I kind of showed where, in the only ones that disqualified were the ones that I wrote about specifically, even though I caught a bunch more. So, so I was showing I didn't think he was being truthful, and saying, hey, we would have caught these people anyhow. Because again, the only people he caught were the ones that I wrote about, and there was another dozen that I didn't mention.
Well, let me ask,
that was still in the results.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So based on your experience in doing this and knowing about this, the world of cheating, do you find that race directors tend to look away, tend to not want to deal with? What is the general consensus among marathon race directors on cheating?
I think the general consensus is I wouldn't say they look away. What I've learned is I think it's a matter of resources. You have a lot of race directors who manage a lot of races, and once one race is over, they need to look forward to make sure they can safely put on the next race. So it's just a matter, they don't have the resources to go backwards and start digging through all the digging through everything to necessarily catch everybody proactively. I think some things are very obvious where it would probably take 15 minutes to make a determination, but some cases it's just a matter of them. This is the vast majority that I've been in contact with it. They have been of the work and and of the tips and whatnot. So
I'm sorry, we didn't get the last one. Most of the last part you said.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, it's my experience that most of the race directors have been appreciative of receiving the tips and of the information.
Yeah, I mean, it puts them in an awkward situation, too, because they're basing it on conclusion and hearsay from a third party, you know, who didn't, like, see the cheating themselves either, right? I mean, you're just giving them data.
Yeah, well, it's data, or it could be informed, you know, pictures, and a lot of times it's, especially at smaller races, I find, you know, where the race, you know, where the runner, I receive tips, and a lot of times, like, hey, I don't want them to know I'm turning them in, because, you know, so they'll kind of go through me to send in their account, because they don't want to be identified as the person who ratted out that runner. So, you know, so I get some of that. But really what I try to do is I'll give the race the information and, you know, ask them to make a determination. And it's rare that I'll, you know, keep on at them, you know, if it's, you know, if they've determined that, hey, no, this runner, you know, believe this is legitimate. Especially if all I have, you know, they're in the technology. So I'll pretty much just make sure I bring it to their attention, let them make the determination that they think is appropriate.
You said all I have is...
I said, in a case, if all I have to be suspicious about is timing data, there's nothing else in the photos or anything else,
right?
Then I pretty much leave it up. Hey, check with the timer. Is there any issue here? But I'll, you know, I trust them with, you know, if they look at it, then I'm happy with that.
Well, and there have to be some instances, and I think I've actually been involved in a few of these, not me personally, but I've seen or heard about it, where someone didn't intend to cheat, didn't try to cheat, wasn't trying to get an advantage, but accidentally cut the course or made a mistake in some way that they didn't realize. Those kinds of people we're not really talking about. You're primarily just focusing on people that you believe cheated.
Yeah, that I believe cheated, and the way that's, you know, when I'm looking at people who use a time to enter Boston, then you can't say you accidentally cheated at that point. You know, someone may have cut the course, or, you know, or maybe something accidentally happened, you know, the day of the course. They made a split decision, like, I'm too tired to finish this race. They cut across and cut a few miles off and ended up with a BQ time. Or they gave their bib to somebody else, which again is against the rules, but that friend ran a BQ time for them. But once they used that time to enter Boston, you know, that's where it, you know, where you can't really say it was an accident.
And now,
that's what I focus on. And if somebody has like a fast time, it's unbelievable, but I don't show them, you know, I don't see them, you know, wearing the medal in the photo or know where they're claiming that time. I'm not going to write about them. It's somebody who I need to, you know, who I believe intentionally cheated and claimed the time as, you know, as a legitimate time.
And now, are you affiliated at this point with any race?
I have some races. I have a couple races that signed up as, you know, as supporters. You know, which, and you know, they're listed on my website, and some timing companies as well, but not. So yeah, so right now there's one race I signed up as a, I believe a silver level supporter. And then what that just means that, hey, you know, they agreed. I'll look at their results. They agreed to provide me any data to help them, you know, to validate their results.
So you're working with the race to make sure that there is no cheating, or to make sure that all the results are accurate.
Exactly.
But you're not affiliated with Boston, with Boston in any way.
No. I think I have a good line of communication with them, but I'm not formally affiliated with Boston.
All right. So these people that cheat, who are they? I mean, because, you know, like on the one hand, like there's people like Rosie Ruiz is a good example. I bet you that if we put her on a lie detector, she'd pass. Like that she seems to be kind of sick and delusional and 100% believes that she didn't cheat. You know, so there seems to be a group of those people, and I've met a few of those people too, that I can't figure out why they're cheating. I can't figure out what the payoff is for them, but I will bet you all of the money that I have that they believe that they didn't cheat, you know? Then there's other people that seem like they're, you know, that they want to win their age group, or they didn't train enough or whatever. Pride, you know, that's a different category too, but it seems like there's different kinds of people that cheat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You get the people, again, I think Boston, and that's the easiest way they can do it. You know, and they may cheat one time just so they can run their one Boston Marathon. But you have the people who seem to be addicted. There's a couple I've written about multiple times who, you know, cheated every way imaginable. He's cut courses. You know, when he got a Boston bib by cutting a course, his wife made a photocopy of the bib and photoshopped it with a different bib, you know, with one digit off, so she could run Boston as well. Once he was caught, he started entering local races under aliases. It's like it's a game to him. You know, hey, how could you possibly get away with it at this point. So you have people there, I think it's just kind of like a game, and it's like that, where they're just obsessive. I wrote about another dentist, not Kip Litton, who cheated, I think it was 12 straight years at Rock and Roll, Arizona. I mean, it's just it's baffling, and then just get a lot. I think social media plays into some of it. Did you really go for a run if you didn't post about it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever? So you get a lot of people who want to kind of inflate their times and brag through social media. I've seen that as well. I've seen there was a woman I never wrote about her. She's been cheating for years, and she'll have 0 splits, and she'll have Instagram photos with holding up her medal. And so right now she'll never show up in the results or anything, but she'll just get the medal and post it. She ran a time and did that. That's just fully for social media purposes. She's not qualifying for anything or taking any awards. She's just crossing the start line, taking a break, and then crossing the finish line 5 hours later, maybe.
But do you think that these people are making reasonable, rational decisions in their cheating, or do you think that these are people that their brain functioning is just not normal, and for whatever reason they're doing this? I mean, it seems like they're certainly. I think there probably are the premeditated, I want to go cheat people. Do you think that it's mostly those, or do you think it's mostly people that for some reason they're just out there?
I think it's mostly premeditated. I want to cheat people okay. Who want to do Boston without, and again, that's what I'm kind of looking for. So I may be a little bit biased there, where I'm looking for people who ran Boston with these times. So I'm probably looking more in that sample of people. But the ones I come across, it's more, the premeditated, I want to cheat people. The ones I come across are on my own with my analytics. Now, I'll get tips on people who I think fall in the other category, and I get tips on. I could tell the person sending me has a grudge, and they're just begging me to write an article. And I was flat out not. I mean, there's been a number of, there was one recently where I probably had 8 different people emailing me about this one woman who cheated in this one race, and she admitted it. And I'm not writing about her. I have no interest in writing about her, but these people keep on hounding me for some reason they have it out for this woman.
So why aren't you writing about her?
It just wasn't, again, before anything was written, she admitted it. They wrote a letter to the race director, say, hey, shut the course, please remove the time. I mean, there's no, at that point, there's no reason for me to out her. And again, the motivation, I get concerned about the motivation of people who send me these tips sometimes. So it didn't seem the right thing to write about her when she's already admitted to the cheating, especially not to, I would never make somebody like that at all identifiable publicly, but, she wrote to me unprovoked, and I guys have no interest in that.
Do you think that the cheating's on the rise? Do you think it's falling because of this, or do you think it's about the same as it ever was?
I think it's about the same, and I do kind of hate it when I see, because I'm writing more articles. I'm out there now, so people kind of interpret that to be, boy, everyone's cheating. I hate that it's increasing. Well, I don't think it's increasing. I think it's just I'm noticing. So I do think I've had an impact in a couple ways. Again, when I'm looking at the 2017 Boston results, I'm finding less of the obvious cases of people that slipped through and actually ran Boston. Now, I identified a lot of people before, after they got their bibs, before they could run the race, they got removed. And, a number of runners on the qualifier races who may have used that time if we didn't get them disqualified. So I think I'm having an impact on how many people are actually getting into Boston. And I would hope I'm having some sort of deterrent that the website is, as far as, people, someone's out there looking, you might be less likely to attempt it.
Have you ever been? Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Boston's been more vigilant. On there, they have a link to click if you suspect something suspicious, which they added this year. And also, yesterday I just got an email from a race director showing me the email the BAA sent to them when they're asking for the results. So, of the Boston qualifiers, where Boston says they may be asking for additional information as far as splits or photos to verify times. And so that was a new. That was a new thing. So I think it's definitely having an impact as far as just awareness and hopefully a deterrent effect.
Have you ever been flipped? Has anybody ever said to you, hey, this guy cheated, you decided he was cheating, you went out and did a blog that he was cheating, and then at some point you realized that you got it wrong?
No, not that I've written an article. I mean, there was some where I've gone pretty far down where I was, where I thought somebody may have cheated, but where it turned out otherwise. But never to a point where I've, written an article about somebody. But yeah, I get tips all the time for, people, I'll get tips on this someone just because someone missed a split and everything else makes sense. Yeah. So it's, there's.
Nope. You broke up a little bit. I lost you. He'll be back. There he is. Now you're back.
Wow. Okay. No, there was never a case where I wrote an article where I called somebody a cheater, or where it turns out I was dead wrong. Again, there was during the review of the 2016 Boston results, or I'm sorry, the 2015 Boston results. There's one I got pretty far down before I finally found a photo that vindicated a person. So I've gotten pretty far down. Thinking somebody may have cheated when they didn't, but never to the point where I, was confident enough to write about them.
All right. So here's a good question. Did you research me at all before this interview?
I'm sorry?
Did you research me at all before this interview, like my results?
No, I have not.
All right. Because there's a few outliers. Well, I mean, there's a few outlier results within my results because I'm very, very slow, but I have a few good performances here and there that, someone might look at and say, well, where'd that come from? But then separate apart from that, there is a cheating scandal involving me out on the internet too.
I haven't even, maybe I came across it at some point and didn't realize it was you, but now I'll have to look that up.
It's really dumb. It's this girl, Rissa Reed, out in California, who accuses all these kind of epic ultra runners of doing like a Rob Young thing. And she constantly posts about how I don't have my foot pod in and I'm not getting all of my foot cadences and all this other stuff. And it's all just bullshit. If you were to really analyze my times, you would realize quickly that no one would ever cheat to run as slow as I do, But anyway, I just
okay, I did see. I saw footpod comments on that Facebook thread. I wasn't quite sure what that was referring to, so I figured that was an inside joke. So yeah, I did see those comments on the Facebook thread that we were going back and forth on.
Yeah, because I do this came up. This woman, she just puts you on your you get on her radar screen by getting a big social media following. And when I finished the slam of races this winter, the Tuscobia 160-mile race, the Arrowhead 135, and another one called Active Epica, she just started accusing me randomly of cheating because I wasn't using a foot pod. But nobody goes to the Arrowhead 135 with a goddamn foot pod on. It's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, that seems pretty absurd. But it's funny. I do get a lot of whenever the general stories come out. It's like people I get emails before Boston like, oh, just so I flew because of this. I get a lot of emails proactively, people tell me, hey, don't think I cheated because I ran slow. And there's so much more to it than that. There's so much more to my analysis. If somebody qualified in 2.5 hours and ran a 5-hour Boston, I'd probably look at them for 2 seconds, see their history, and check that, and they'd be cleared. Literally, it's like a 2-minute review process for most cases.
Well, because there's got to be a lot of people that work their ass off to qualify, and then when they get there, they treat it like a victory lap and enjoy it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you can tell that right away. I see patterns. You can see whether different people do that. Usually, a lot of times it's somebody who's running with a friend who has a charity bib. You can tell they're in the same picture with this person the whole time. Okay, you know what happened there. I've come across a wide range of pregnant women. Who are still running Boston. You can tell because of their shirts. They'll be running for whatever that says. So okay, yeah, it makes sense why they'd run slow. So yeah, so there's. Yeah, and a lot of people they put all the work in, to qualify. It's a spring marathon, so a lot of training's a lot of times not as good, in the winter months. So yeah, there's fully understand all of those reasons.
So, to your knowledge, you've never gotten it wrong?
No.
Do you worry about that? I think I lost you.
Oh man, that'd be it as far as I'm concerned. I think that would pretty much blow it up for me. So I'm very, very careful. So no, I've never got it wrong. There was one on the thread where I questioned there were some weird ages. Some of that. So I kind of asked the question in one case, and so there's one up in the air, but I never said, hey, this woman cheated. I was kind of throwing out there over a year ago, saying, hey, what could have happened here? What am I missing? But no, never have I posted an article on somebody, and it turns out I was wrong.
So let's talk a little bit now about the methodology that you use today, okay? And let's say that someone sends you an email. It says Coomer cheated to qualify for Boston and the Milwaukee Marathon, blah, blah, blah. And for some reason you decide that it's an interesting thing to look into. You look into it and you strongly suspect that I cheated. You're not you're not going to publish an article just based on strongly suspecting it. You would have to have it would have to be an open and shut case.
Right, absolutely. So say that happened. So I would look at, first thing I would do, I almost wouldn't care what else the person said. Besides, say, they think you cheated at this race. I'll just look independently at that race and say, okay, what looks like you cheated? Oh, hey, you missed one timing mat. Okay, did your in that stretch that you missed a timing mat, did you run a 5-minute mile and then back to running 8-minute miles, or was there something gained by missing that timing mat that's obvious? And then I would look at I'd look at your history. I'd look at photos. Okay, are you in all the photos? And so I'd look at a lot, and of course the running history. So, and even then, it would have to be, and with the timing mats, as I've learned, it's the patterns on. Where it's usually a timing error, which is usually somebody runs a real fast split followed by a real slow split, but the overall pace stays the same. That's usually a timing, some kind of timing malfunction, not somebody cutting the course. So it would have to be real obvious. And then at that point, if I'm like, boy, yeah, I think this result's questionable, I'd probably email the timer. Say, hey, can you look? Does this look right? Did you? And a lot of times I'll say, yeah, we had a timing issue, or we cleared the guy, or whatever. And then I'd look, look at other results. You've run every race at, 5 hours, and then every race in your history, and even this, if your shorter races calculated to a 5-hour marathon, then you ran a 12 hour and 45 minutes. That would raise a flag, but there would still need to be independent evidence. I wouldn't say you cheated just because of a time. There needs to be evidence, of that specific race where I say, yeah, he absolutely cheated.
All right. And then I post me, with the picture biting the metal, and I go Boston bound 245, and I'm an obviously obese guy who's never run 245 and never going to run 245. And you decide, it. Okay. I cheated for sure. Okay. Mm-hmm. What's the next, do you email the race director? Do you email me? What's your methodology then at that point?
I would email the race director first, to say, make aware and see if they're, usually thanks to look into it. And if there's issue disqualification, then if I'm going to write an article on you specifically, if I'm going to write one on Scott, I'll make every effort to try to contact you, before doing so, and say you're just Scott. You're not Scott with the podcast and with the following. At this point, I probably I wouldn't name you in the article. If there's photo relevant, maybe. Kind of the purpose of not naming someone in an article is so that you wouldn't come up into cheating. So if you're just like Scott, average Joe, right. Not public related, not profiting from running in any way, shape, or form. There's something made it worth writing about. I would kind of protect you a little bit.
Okay, I'm losing you a little bit, but I think I got the gist of it. So if I'm a public person, you treat me different than a private person.
Yeah.
And if you contact the race director and he says, yes, that Scott we disqualified, then does that end it, or do you still consider writing the article?
I would still possibly write the article. It really depends on the specific case. Again, it just really depends. Hypothetically, there's I've done that before. I've written articles after people have been disqualified. The one that really went viral, with Jane, who cheated the half marathon in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if
I know that story. Yes, she was a writer. She's a kind of a public person.
Yeah, she was kind of public. She was a blogger. She was comped the trip to the race. She got second place in the race. She argued with the other finishers that she really deserved it. She told me she didn't take the award. I had a picture of her at the award ceremony. So there was a whole lot there. Even then, I didn't actually name her within the text of the article. It was all the other follow-up that got her, they got her name out there.
And she went back with a bike and rode the course or something for Strava? Is that
she went back. She tried to create, people are questioning why she had a manual Strava entry, and so then she went back and rode the course afterwards to try to create a map. I don't know if she realized didn't know much about cadence or that it would be time stamped, but that was just more evidence. And she's the one who I got the picture of her watch showing that she ran 11.6 miles instead of 13.1.
Yeah.
A whole lot there. But she was, by the time I published the article, because she knew that, she finally admitted on her Instagram that she did cheat and she was disqualified. But she still, even up till the second I pushed the button on publish, I said, here's what I know. Will you admit to this, that you took the award? She still wouldn't. She didn't want to admit that she talked to me, and she wouldn't admit that she, took the award. Her story to me was that she got tired, she gave up, she crossed the finish line, went right to the hotel because she was so tired. Where I've got pictures of her again accepting the award and whatnot. So I tried to give her lots of outs, but she wouldn't.
So if she would have admitted it to you, you wouldn't have published the article?
She would have admitted everything to me.
Oh, I lost you. One sec. Okay.
Yeah, if she would have admitted to me, it had taken a little bit of a different tone, but she was still lying about accepting the award and claiming the second place is real and all that. So I think it was. There was a case, where I had run ahead, and it probably would have gone as viral as the Jane case for the woman, and she fully admitted to it, and she was the one. She was actually on the Today Show in shadow with her husband, where her husband was carrying her bib in races. She wasn't qualifying for Boston, or she wasn't. She says she wasn't using the times to run Boston. She did have one Boston qualifying time in Philadelphia, but it was her husband running with her bib or with her. But she fully came clean, and so I did everything. I kept her private. I even assisted her in getting her results removed and everything else. And so when somebody fully owns up to what they do, I'll definitely keep them anonymous or not write an article.
Okay, so you're going to treat someone who's public differently than someone who's private. I get that, and that makes sense. But in terms of let's take both of them. It doesn't matter who. At the point at which the person, whoever they are, admits to you that they cheated and they're disqualified from the race, and you still decide to write the article, what is the virtue of that article?
And again, that's very rare. Somebody admits to me they disqualified. It maybe happened 3 or 4 times. And in every case, except for, I think, the where she admitted to cheating and was disqualified, I had either taken down photos or taken down the article altogether, where someone just, fully admitted to it, and whatnot. So, so really the only case of that Jane article. And again, I think it's, kind of it serves as a deterrent. And there were so many interesting levels to that story. I thought, it was actually newsworthy, and everybody who picked it up and ran with it obviously agreed with that interpretation that it was a newsworthy story, based on all the other things on her. Again, profiting. She was paid to run that race. She was paid for the accommodations and to write on a travel blog about being there. So there was a whole lot more there. But again, if it was somebody. If for some reason I decided to write about somebody random that used a time that entered Boston with it, time they cheated, and they immediately back and admitted to it and did all that, then I would probably at the very least just make it completely anonymous as far as not given the full time or the or the actual race. So if there's anything in it that like a bib number that I used as evidence in the article, I would probably obscure that if I hadn't already.
So. Okay, so this is where you and I are going to start to not have common ground. So, and let's just say you and I, we both are against cheating. Okay, I'm with you on that. And for example, if someone cheats and you report them to the race director, and the race director removes them from the results, I'm down with that. That's fine. I think that, like one of the people on our podcast told a story. I don't know if it was in the chain of discussion or not, but where she did a 100-miler and the girl that finished in front of her took a car for 20 miles in the middle and then took a picture with her finisher medal and talked about how she ran 100 continuous miles and, bumped my friend out of the top 10. And, and what she did is went to the runner and said, listen, that's not cool. You should tell the race director. Then she didn't tell the race director. Then she went to my friend went to the race director, told the race director, and then the girl got disqualified, didn't end up in the results. Now, at that point in time, she has this podcast with, anywhere from 5 to 20,000 people listening, where she could have told the story and, shame this girl. And by the way, this girl is a sponsored runner who's really high profile social media, was on a podcast. I mean, she was a big, public person, let's say. And, but at that point it became, what's to gain from that? What's the benefit to that? And my friend didn't do it. And in that instance, it seems to me that you, in that same situation, probably would have published this article. This is a girl that's sponsored by a few big athletic companies. She's high profile on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. She does interviews. She has a travel blog. She's a bigger deal. I think you probably would have published the article.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Why?
First thing, I mean, she was caught cheating at this one race. I would look at all the other races first. Okay, is that the only one she cheated at? And a lot of times it's harder to tell what some of the ultras. There's not as many photos taken on course or whatnot.
She's also Ironman too, so she's not just an ultra runner. This was her first 100-mile race.
Okay. Yeah, but again, she was sponsored. She probably was gaining based on that that false result. She was disqualified. Was she disqualified pretty much immediately?
Yes. But I want to say this: she didn't go on social media and say to everybody, "Hey,
yeah,
I've learned that I made a mistake, or I shouldn't have said I finished because of the way that it happened." Like she had a story, she had a really big justification for what she did, and she never went out into the public and righted it. She just got disqualified, and she just quietly never talked about it again.
Yeah, I mean, did she ever talk about the? Did she post about finishing the 100 miles and where there are all kinds of?
She did, yeah.
Yeah, that stuff. Yeah, I probably would have wrote about it. Again, that's within this guy, written, similar articles of that. And I would have contacted her and depending, and if she was, was she contrite, was she ignoring me, instead of, is she calling me a bully, I would reach out to her, before I wrote anything. But just based on what you told me, I would be something that I would write about.
Right. So that's where you and I kind of part ways a little bit. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, because to me, okay, we agree that marathon cheating is a wrong, and it's a societal wrong, and so on and so forth. But I also believe that social media shaming, or just public shaming generally, is wrong. And I think that to some extent, even though some of these people are public, and even though in some instances you're taking steps, so to speak, to not publish their name specifically or their identifying characteristics, and I know that these things get shared and they go viral and they go everywhere.
Yeah, and that Jane case is the perfect example. I feel bad for Jane today.
Oh, Jane. Okay, yeah.
Jane, the one that went, yeah.
Right.
That one absolutely went viral.
What is she? Do you know anything about what she's doing today, where she is, or anything like that?
Definitely, she's kind of shut down the social media. She's, not very public. So no, I've attempted to reach.
I lost
you. I just want to talk, want to share a story.
Yeah,
but yeah, I've tried reaching out to her a couple times, but she hasn't responded to anybody. But yeah, it got to the point with that where, initially I was getting tons of media requests to talk about that story, and I was taking most of them. And then I think it was a week after I wrote the article, maybe even longer, where Inside Edition called me, wanted me to come out there and wanted to talk to me about it. And finally, I'm like, all right, this girl has had enough. And before that point, I had no idea how. The potential of any post, even the ones I did about Gia and whatnot, were nowhere near what the interest for Jane. So it's it definitely bothers me. But
I mean, Jane is no longer working at the HuffPost anymore, right?
What's that?
Jane lost her job.
No, I don't think Jane lost her job.
Oh, I don't think she writes for the paper anymore.
She didn't write for she got put as a Huffington Post writer in all those articles. I never mentioned Huffington Post. I never mentioned Harvard. Her last article for Huffington Post was 2015.
Okay.
It was, she had, that was written on her social media profiles, but she had nothing recent with Huffington Post. I don't think she was writing for Huffington Post when she cheated.
Okay.
So I do not believe that she lost her job or anything.
Well, we don't know.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
You're correct.
But we know that
she wasn't actively writing for the Huffington Post at the time.
But we also know that she was a pretty active social media person, and now she's disappeared from social media.
Yeah.
So I mean, you would agree with me that her life probably was turned upside down at best, ruined at worst.
at least for a period of time.
I mean, she could potentially be in therapy. She could be depressed. Have you ever read that book by John Rawson, that Have You Been Publicly Shamed?
No, I have not.
Do you know about like the Justine Sacco case and the programmers and like for that woman that she flipped off the statute at Arlington in front of the "Be Quiet and Be Respectful" sign? Or you don't know any of these things?
And I've written about one. There was a case, and that's why I think where we kind of differ in what is shaming. I've written some articles about it. Like there was the woman who had very few. I think it might have been on Instagram where she wrote. She was going to Africa, and she said something. Made.
That's the one. Yes. That's Justine Sacco.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't get the name. She made the inappropriate joke, and by the time she was off the plane, she was fired. I even wrote about that. I said I think that's a point of she was shamed. She was inappropriately shamed. I mean, she was. Yeah, that was not a good joke. Don't get me wrong there, but but all of a sudden she was a national media sensation before she landed, and then I compared that to the Rachel Dolezal, who was was working for the
NAACP.
NAACP.
Yeah,
and that's one. Okay, it was appropriate. She was using that identity to. And again, I think there might be some, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I shouldn't say that, but I think she's, there were other issues there where I think that was more appropriate. So I kind of, did those. But what I hate about the shaming, if someone puts themselves out there and they make their life running, or whatever, and blogging and, promoting themselves, or, even like the running coaches, I've got running, the running coach, Marlon, on that, and he was recently disqualified from a race and denied it. So, at one point you're reporting, hey, here's what this person did. And usually if you read my articles, it's, hey, here's the splits, here's that, here's that. I'd rarely call and say, hey, this person cheated. Now it's at some point my conclusion is pretty obvious. But to call someone out for something they actually did and just not even really give my opinion, say, hey, this person did this and make that public. I don't see how that's shaming. Calling somebody fat or slow or ugly or, there's real shaming. That's a real issue, in the high schools with kids, and it's an issue. And I think we kind of dilute that by every time I write an article, this person can just respond, hey, you can't shame. Well, at some point you need to be accountable for your actions as well. If that makes sense. Well,
no, I mean, and I understand your position, and I don't disagree with the fact that it's not. I don't think that you are publishing these articles and saying, I'm going to get that fucker, and they're going to share this all over the internet, and his life is going to be ruined. I don't think that's your intention, right?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
But what we've learned from Justine Sacco and from Rachel Dolans and even from Jane is that in the course of a 12-hour plane ride, something can go so fucking viral that your life is changed forever. Right?
Yep.
And you can't control that. When you put that, like when you put the Jane article out, you said, I didn't expect it to do exactly what it did. Like I don't even think you could have foreseen the shitstorm that something like that causes.
No, and I absolutely didn't.
But, at the same time, that's good. I mean, and I'm not saying this as in this is your intent, but that's good for business, because you're now in the click business. You're in the controversy business. You're in the selling T-shirts and hat business. You're in the, if I'm on Good Morning America, if I'm in Sports Illustrated, if I'm in the New York Times, that's good for business. And at the same time, you can't control that snowballing that happens to the public spectacle. So whereas I don't think that you're the one necessarily that's shaming it, that people are taking your article and sharing it and saying, look at this bitch who's lying and stealing and blah, 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 and then sharing it on their wall times thousands of people all over the internet, right?
Yeah, and it's a struggle, and I can't say, again, I said how far, that got with Jane. Then at the same time, I mean, she still flat out lied every step of the way until it was to the point where she was in a corner. Even before I wrote anything, again, she could have, the same way I wrote the article on Linda, and that's not her real name. I had an article ready to go, and it was, it would have been a juicy one, but, I talked to her and I, believed her, and no one knows to this day who Linda is. So I gave every opportunity, I tried to say, tell me the truth. When I told her I had photos of her, accepting the award, and she still wouldn't admit to me she did that. Again, at some point, how much of that is caused by her actions and how much of that is caused by me? And again, I found out by her from a tip. If I didn't write that, Let's Run probably would have wrote about it. It would have been out there. That's not an excuse on my part. Again, it's my article. So I don't take responsibility. But again, I think if she didn't, none of that would have happened. And I would think because of Jane, there's probably somebody out there who did not cheat because of Jane. There's probably a number of people, like that. So. Well, yeah, it's kind of a good argument, but I don't want to make. I'd like to have that without having Jane be like a sacrificial lamb, for a few people not cheating. But
and we're using Jane as an example, and God forbid Jane's not the public person. Let's say Jane's the private person, and let's say that person kills himself. I mean, that's going to feel bad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and although it hasn't happened, and although we hope it doesn't happen, and although we can both say, pretty sure it probably won't happen, but I think that intellectually, if we're going to be honest, we have to say that Jane taking her own life is a foreseeable thing that could happen.
I mean, I'd say anything could happen. I mean, you can look at 100,000 things that happen, daily in the media. Someone's being scanned baseball stadium and picking their nose or something, and they feel shame for that. Or,
sure.
Any news article that's not a positive news article could have that same effect. And I get called out all the time for, again, I still think it's a minority. Of course, I'm insulated by a lot of people who read my stuff are my fans, and so that maybe I'm getting a skewed perception of how people feel about my site. But again, when I write those articles, it's not to forget completely where I'm going here, but again, I think it's the overall positive. But again, if you write anything bad about anything, there's whatever minuscule percent chance there is that something can happen like that.
Well, and it's changed over time.
And that would kill me. And if that were to happen, if Jane would have, God forbid, killed herself or found out something to that effect, that probably would have that would have been it for an investigation. That would have been awful.
Yeah, I mean,
so I've taken, so it's evolved. So I've taken, that's why I take steps there. It's funny, every article I write where I obscure a bib, I get, why the hell? I need to see them, and I have to correct the person. So, or if whenever I get it from both sides, no matter which way I go. But again, I'm going to always err, and I've gotten more conservative as far as that goes. I'm always going to err on keeping, not writing an article or keeping somebody anonymous who who I think I shouldn't name. But yeah, if I write, I just block random, course cutter. I get messages say, I know who this is. And I wonder, well, why do you need what that doesn't add to the story? So, and that's something I've learned over, doing that. So yes, I've gotten more conservative. And that was one of the concerns with that Linda story on the Today Show. That she, and I've actually consider her a friend now. But I had concerns on how that would have truly affected her, when she talked to me. So that's why I didn't write about her. And that kind of gave me a different perspective as well, talking to somebody that in depth, knowing what effect the articles would have on them.
Yeah, I mean, and I've reached out to a few people trying to get someone to talk to me, and most of them say they don't want to because they don't want to give more attention to the site, and they don't want to give more attention to themselves because they perceive that their life has been, destroyed by this. Whether or not that's true is neither here nor there. And I think also, from your standpoint, the time that you wrote about the woman in the Fort Lauderdale Marathon, you probably didn't have the capacity that you have now, and that, I, as a podcaster, I think about that. Like if I say something about, Tony Silvestri on the podcast, that's like bringing 20,000 people over to my house and giving a speech to them, and that's something that I have to be very careful about, but to me, like the thing, it's not necessarily your article, and it's not necessarily like if it was in Runner's World and it was like a column, Derek's cheating corner. All right. That would be one thing, but it's this almost like blood in the water feeling that I get when I see these posts go viral, that lead me to this question of, if I could eliminate one ill from society and I had to choose between cheating in marathons or public shaming, which one would I pick? And I'm picking public shaming every time, I mean, obviously, right? No one's ever, no one's ever killed themselves because the guy in front of them cheated in the marathon. No one's ever had to go to therapy because, they came in, 352nd place rather than 351st place, But the public humiliation and the public shaming aspect is the thing that really, really gets to me,
No, and I understand your perspective, and I think, again, we're differing in, where the public shaming is. And if you look at, the articles I wrote and that I had taken down when I first started the blog, where I, give out every information I had because maybe 10 people were looking at it, to what I do now, I've definitely gotten more conservative and may continue to go that way. So, I'm doing what I can there. And really, in my ideal world, I'll be, I'm going to be partnering with races and just working on, keeping the cheaters out. And I'll be honest, the part I hate the worst about this is writing the articles. Analysis, I enjoy the data of it and all that stuff. The least favorite part is actually writing articles. I'm not a good writer. You can see that from my blog. So that's the part I enjoy the least. It's more kind of digging into the data and just kind of and finding these things.
Right, and I want to be perfectly clear. If the Milwaukee Marathon wants to hire you to make sure nobody cheats and to analyze the data, I'm 100% on board with that, and I'm still fascinated with the endeavor and would want to interview you and hear your story and your methodology and all that just as much. It's just it's that place where even if you don't say their name, even if you don't have their bib, but you have their picture, and then I see their next door neighbor sees it, and then he passes it to their neighbor, and then everybody that he went to high school with sees it, all the people that he worked with at his job sees it, his future employer sees it, whatever the case may be. Like Jane's fucked, I mean, every time you look up Jane's name, this is what you see. And that's probably going to be the case for the rest of her life.
Yeah, that would be, that my article was that because of Jane. I'm saying Jane.
Well, it kind of
much of that responsibility. It's that, and how much you got. And again, like I said, I was relatively quickly, I said, again, I told you I was turning down interviews because I said, okay, let's not talk about her anymore. Same way with Mike Rossi. Now he's not as likable, he's not as sympathetic as maybe Gia was or Jane maybe. But still, it's like, okay, let's move on to, the next one. I'll be happy to talk about my work, but I'm not talking about her anymore, in detail. So,
if,
but I would say, and, what about cases, I wrote about, here's an example, and here's one that, kind of along the same lines, where I wrote about the gentleman took an extra medal for his
I remember
wife,
that story. Yes.
And I posted that on, I posted on Facebook. I did that, and it was along the lines of an article with running. So basically, I think
it was along the same lines as an article. Yeah, it was along the same lines as an article.
And then. Okay. And as part of that article, I also wrote, there was a chain, maybe 8 women who crossed finish line at the same time holding hands for the Boston Marathon. So I kind of just wrote a quick article of, hey, is this cool or is this a big deal or not? And that went, and that went nuts. And so I got criticism for that. And again, that's another one where, boy, this guy probably didn't deserve, as much as he got. And that was my initial mistake there was a picture in the background that had his last name on it. I had no idea. So part of that was, I missed blocking out something in an initial post I made, not even through the website. But then Runner's World picked up the same story, and other articles picked up the same story and included that name in there. So it's like, and I've seen that a lot of times with Runner's World where, I'll write the article, then, get the kind of brunt of it, then they'll kind of do a follow up on it, or they'll write about the same thing. Then I get the same criticism, and Runner's World doesn't, which is fine. So,
right, but just like me, your metric is now shares, comments, and likes. So you have an incentive to put out the kind of product that people are going to be outraged about and share the hell out of and be mad and get, stir up emotions. That's going to be how you make your money.
Yeah, I mean that, and and contributions with it, those don't necessarily tie together, directly. It's monetized and how much money it's making, and we went around and around on that. And like I'll say, it wasn't for the first. I think I said for the first almost a year. There was no monetization whatsoever. I added the ads, and I checked after we had our discussion. I think I made $300 in revenue as of December of last year. So it was it was 18 months before I made more than $300. And December was when I put up the contribution link where I started getting some reader contributions, which have been more than that. But
right, but I mean, and my point on that was, and I've had this argument with other people in the past, is Elvis is making records in my basement. I mean, you can say you're not making any money, but if there's no independent way of verifying it, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying I'm not making money. My point was, and again, you can say anytime, you can say Derek's making millions of dollars off the website. By your rationale,
but that's not what I said. That's not what I said. What I said is that you're doing it for money, meaning you make money.
The wording. It was,
yeah.
It was something to the effect of, and I thought I just had like a little quick, rebuttal to that, where it's like, hey, I'm making profit, or I'm profiting or something. I just said, I wish it was to that point. And then that's where you start asking for tax returns.
Yeah. And so just to back into to what the incentive for what I said is that, to me, the fact that you're shaming people in public, or let's just say,
let's not say that's a fact.
Well,
I am not. I don't think I am shaming people in public.
So what about Jane? That's not public shaming?
I did not publicly shame Jane.
You wrote
an article. I didn't name her. I wrote. If you write an article, what about you write anybody commits a crime that's in the newspaper? Is that public shaming?
Yes.
I mean,
for sure.
I mean, your definition is very broad. I mean, so I mean, somebody murders somebody and they report about it, or someone's not even convicted before that's not convicted. Somebody's accused of murder and the news reports on it. Is that public shaming?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's your definition. Then yes, I publicly shame Jane if it's that broad of a definition as far as shaming. So you would like all that to stop?
No, that's not what I'm saying. And
then there's a level. Then what's the line you draw? Where public shaming is okay, to where it's not.
Right. Here's
your definition of public shaming.
Right. Here's where I'm drawing the line. I'm saying that when you shame someone in a way that you have an uneven, they can't fight back. I mean, basically on social media, and the more people that see it, the more money that you make. That's what I was saying. Okay.
For anyone who writes that goes for you. More people who listen to you, and you're talking to me. You'll probably I share this. You'll get a lot. You'll make more money off it. You'll get more views, which will lead to more money in your pocket because of me.
Well, let me push back. I will make more money if more people listen to my interview with you. But yes, my purpose for having you on this podcast was to get to know you, to have a dialogue. Sure. And you're admittedly going to make money off this too, because people are going to go click on the Marathon Investigation site and follow up on a lot of different articles that we're talking about. And my motive for having you on here, it's about motive, is not to shame you. And here's where it's different from the journalist, right? The journalist motive is to report the news, is to get.
You think so?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I don't disagree with you on that.
That was a blanket statement. But in many cases, most of that going to MSN and it's all paid content. It's to get clicks.
Let's say intent. Okay, intent or motive are two different things. But that to me, that's where the profit came into play. Was if you were just a guy, now you could be one of those like true believer people that just says, I want to right all the wrongs of the world, and I'm going to go out there and do this blog, and I'm going to post about people that cheat because I don't want there to be cheating anymore. Okay. I think that's different, and it may not have a different effect, but it's different in terms of the intent than the guy who says, and I'm going to sell shirts and hats, and I'm going to get paid on clicks. That those are two different things. Like if someone wants to pay you $1 million to make sure that nobody cheats in their marathon by doing your analysis with your special set of skills, more power to you, And if those people get disqualified from the race, are they going to feel public humiliation and shame? Maybe, But your intention was to help the race police itself, not to get more money if more people shame this person, And I'm not saying that that's what your motive is, because I was very, very clear about the fact that, I said, you didn't publish this article about Jane saying, fuck Jane, I want everybody to share this shit and ruin her life. That wasn't necessarily what you're setting out to do. Okay. I'm saying the ick factor comes into play with me when that happens to the thing that you do, and you make more money because it happens while Jane, slips further into depression or whatever, her problem is. I mean, she obviously had problems before.
We can make assumptions. Let's not say Jane's slipping in depression. We don't know.
Usually when you tune out of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and you disappear from social media, things aren't going well for you, usually.
Well, let's not say, say, but yeah, it did not go well for her.
Yeah. And you didn't want that to go the way it did either. You didn't want it to go to the point that it went to either, admittedly.
No, I mean, nothing had before, nothing has since. I definitely didn't anticipate that being. Now I think I have more of a gauge as to, if I come across another store with something like that, so now I have kind of more of an idea, and I need to be more prepared to live with that, or say, okay, is that appropriate, in this case, or not, going into it. But let's talk a little bit about the motive if we can, because you
Sure.
went on about that, and that was fine. Again, kind of our discussion stemmed from on Facebook was, again, my point was the website was not created with any intent of profit. I think we've talked about that. I didn't start doing any kind of monetization until about a year, and really that was just hoping I could cover the costs there were. And there's not much cost when it was on Blogger,
right.
But there again were some costs in that whatever 100 hours I spent on it. But regardless, it was got maybe $300 in ad revenue, getting pretty much to where it started increasing a little bit was where I started accepting my initial content. A little bit of backlog of people who were wanting to contribute somehow. And some of that money went to people who scrape data. I don't know how to scrape data off the web to be able to look at reviews. So I paid some of them out or whatever. But, all in all, point was, to this point, I'm not ahead of the game. Now, and my cash flow, is it bringing in money now more than what my day-to-day expenses are? Yeah. But again, I created, to kind of cover myself, I created the business. I created the logo and stuff. So yeah, there was costs associated to it. But yeah, if I just didn't put anything else into it and let it run, would it make money? Yes. Would it make enough for me to, I say quit my day job, but I don't have a day job at the moment. So, but it's not enough to sustain me, and it never will be. So really kind of the motivation was to kind of raise awareness, which I think I've done. So I could be more selective, with the stories. In the perfect world, hell, I'd love to, work directly with enough races to where, that's how I can make my impact, and I can have a bigger impact. And then then these articles on these individual runners, I wouldn't see those as necessary to kind of to have the same effect on on the cheating, and where I think there should be some accountability.
Well, sure, and just so we're clear, I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm saying there's unintended negative impact, but I'm also saying there's unintended beneficial impact insofar as maybe someone didn't cheat, or maybe someone thinks twice before cheating because they've seen these, paid. I mean, I don't necessarily think that cheating is going to stop because of this, because I still think that a lot of the people that cheat, and probably even Jane, not quite right in the head. And, like when you do what she did and what you're doing is going to get found out, you're just making bad decision after bad decision to try to cover up the bad decision. That's not going to end well. But, if you could find a way to stop cheating in the world, I am 100% behind you. I'm just trying to think, like, how do we keep it from getting to the point where anyone's life is ruined, And I don't know what the answer to that is. I really don't.
Yeah, and really it's, again, I can't say, well, if I didn't do it, somebody else would, but if I didn't do it, somebody else would. I mean, it would have been on the Let's Run, and we see what they can do. And they make it a whole lot more personal than it gets way uglier on there than what anything from my site does. When they let it go, I'll say, them, I mean, that's all about the clicks. To keep that Mike Rossi thread open for 3 years when everyone's just talking about his wedding DJ business and his wife, that was all about them getting traffic to the website to look at the Mike Rossi thread.
Right, but that
wasn't about did he cheat for a whole year. So you don't talk about
sure.
I mean, I think a lot of good has come out. Again, kind of the same way. I think a lot of good has come out. People, being found some site, but they're more like talk about the drug cheating and all that stuff. But a whole lot goes unchecked there as well. But
you have a lot more power than Let's Run does right now. You know that when you share that article in Marathon Maniacs or Trail and Ultra Running Facebook group or wherever it is that goes, that's hitting tens of thousands of people are reading. A lot more people reading your stuff than are reading Let's Run. Let's Run is like It's like a fishbowl of toxic people that are, just kind of bitching about 5K times.
They still get more traffic than me. You can check. I mean, you probably checked my check.
Oh no, I haven't
checked my metrics. So you could. But yeah, no, they get. Yeah, but yeah, to that point, I will agree that stays within that running community.
And it's not
it's all toxic people. It's a lot more
visual.
Normal people than you think. It kind of stays there. When I report it can get shared. It gets shared. Most of my article traffic gets driven through through when I post it on my page, it gets shared. Sometimes I'll share it. Usually I'll share it directly to Maniacs or Trail Mouse Running myself. If I don't, someone else probably eventually will if it's appropriate. So most of mine, you can see on the articles how many Facebook shares there are. Some there's, it gets in the thousands, and so, some, it's not so much. So so I will agree my articles reach a broader audience than what Let's Run does.
Is there anything? Well, I had two questions. One, let's say that girl's listening right now, Jane. Is there anything that you would want to say to her, or that you've tried to say to her, or communicate with her in any way?
Yeah, and I have, I apologize for it going, getting as much attention as it did. So I apologize for what my role. Again, I feel I felt bad about how that when I had no idea I thought the Gia article was viral, which got picked up in a couple papers and got some social media. But the Jane was, that was national viral, on most news sites. So I've reached out for her, said, hey, that wasn't my intention.
Is there anything that you can do that you've thought about or that you're thinking about doing to try to protect from that happening in the future to other people?
I'm just there's just a lot of articles that I don't write that I may have written in the past. I mentioned, the one before about the girl. She did in 15, 20 marathons, and it had so much run play, but I could write about it. It would get a ton of clicks. It would bring me, a ton of traffic. But so there's articles like that I know I could just write just to get the traffic that I'm not writing.
Have you?
Where it's not going to serve the purpose. This woman, maybe 5 years ago she was getting age group awards for that, for doing that. Now it's more sad that, I'm not going to, write that article. And there's probably another half dozen articles that if I just wanted to get clicks that I, could publish tomorrow and I would, would get clicks I'm not writing. So I'm more selective and more cognizant of what the impact could be, and I make greater efforts and give more time to try to get a response and try to get the other person to maybe participate in the story, like I did with Linda, who was on Today's Show. So she ended up writing, her perspective on what drove her to doing that. And again, I texted her about weekly on that. So so I make more efforts in that vein than I would have in the past, and said, "Oh, I just need to, write an article, and I hope you don't respond so I can write this." Or it was never like that. But it's So I'm more careful on it. It's more about what I write, and again, and even in the most in most cases, there's not a benefit to posting the bib number, or I'll even obscure their full time so someone can't figure out who it is if I, and have less photos. So, if you go back to what I used to write and what I include now, I'm giving a lot less information, because I think most of the online trolls, if there's not a picture on there, they're not going to really, spend a couple hours digging and try to figure out who this person is so they can send them a nasty email. It's, so the harder I make it for someone to identify a runner I'm writing about, the less of that backlash they'll get.
What are you going to do someday if you find out that you did get it wrong? Like on just one any specific case. Like let's say that, someone comes to you and they prove it and you're like, you know what, I did get that wrong. Do you have a plan for that?
Yeah, obviously you kind of can't, can you put the, the toothpaste back in the tube? Not really, but no, I would do everything I could to get out there, an apology and, how I got it wrong, and, try to, exonerate the person the best of my ability would be at that point. So knowing that I can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, that's why I am extremely careful to where, it's close to 100% confident as you can, you can get before, I write an article where I'm, particularly an article specifically about somebody. If I'm quoting numbers like, hey, I identified, 15 runners who I believe cut the course of this race, that's, but I'm not giving any, details. That's one thing. But if I'm, writing about someone, profiling on someone individually and specifically, I would. I need to be about 100%. That's why I do everything possible to get a hold of that person. And there's some cases where I'm sure a person cheated, but I couldn't find a way to get a hold of them, where I just shelved the article and just and went on, because I want to give the person a chance to say, oh yeah, here's what happened, or yes, I did it, or no, I didn't cheat. Here's have some GPS evidence or whatever.
So at this point now, let's say that it's not a public person, it's just a private person that you catch cheating, and you reach out to them and they say, listen, I admit it. I cheated. I was wrong. Here's why. I know I'm stupid. Please don't publish this article. I was disqualified and my time is gone. Please don't publish the article. At this point, would you not publish that article, or would it still be a call that you would make?
No, I don't think, just based on that, and then just, cases where I probably wouldn't publish that article. I may ask that person, and it wouldn't be a requirement. And the same as I did with Linda. I'd say, hey, I'm not going to publish this article, but I'd love to get your perspective on what led you to this and that. And I think that's more of an interesting story. I would love to write more of those stories. Like, hey, this person cheated. Here's what led to it. Here's, the reasons, to maybe, help, some other people who may have felt pressure to cheat for whatever reason. So
how many of those, how many of those kind of conversations have you had, like, with people about why they cheated?
Again, it's a very small handful will actually admit that, because I know it was, the Jane, the Linda, and I could think of a couple others. There was one person who had a very, popular blog. He was not in the United States. It was a marathon review site. He was being sent to, destination marathons to write about them. And she did, College Arts in Boston, and he had a very high profile, public job, where he was at as well. And so, I wrote about him, and I had emailed him and wasn't getting responses before that. And that was before the blog ever took off. That was before the GIA article that was leading up to the Runner's World one. And then, before he could even, he even got a hold of me, he took his blog down, then he emailed me, and per his request, that's like, this guy, he admits it, he was wrong, he doesn't want it to bleed into the other aspects of his life, and he did everything that I would have asked him to do, beforehand. So I took the article down. So there's a small handful of, people who've admitted it. But again, that got a little bit public. Again, there was a private one too. And even though I still didn't agree with the justification, it was one I wrote about who, a woman, I don't remember which marathon it was. She cheated down in Boston. Then the email was, she admitted to cutting the course. She said she was planning to raise money for charity anyhow. It was an accident. I'm like, well, you may have cut the course by accident, but you didn't enter Boston by accident. But she still, but she admitted to cheating, and I went ahead and took the article down. She wasn't named or anything, but I took the article down, once she admitted to cheating, because she was a pretty random person. Actually, that's an article now I probably wouldn't write.
I think it would be fascinating. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get that many people to hear, but I think it would be fascinating to just get honest cheating stories and just see what the mindset is,
Yeah, and many have tried. I hear from reporters all the time, like, hey, can you put me in contact with somebody who admitted to cheating? Go talk to me. I'm like, there's no one that's going to talk to you. I think we had one in the first Runner's World article. There was one runner who talked about it. And he was one that, I think it was I don't know if it's Strava. It was one of the Matt My Run or whatever, where they showed the track, showed him cutting across the course. Or it was obvious, and so he So we agreed, I'll make sure I won't publish any of your information in my articles. I kind of worked with Runner's World. I give my word, so he talks anonymously to Runner's World. So,
was that the British guy from Runner's World that wrote the article?
No.
Because I got contacted by a British guy who writes for Runner's World.
I know he's working on, I know he's working on this different, Kit Fox has written a number of articles. He's here. He wrote the initial profile, and he's done some follow-ups as well, including the one that was the case of the European kid who got disqualified from the London Marathon unjustly, and I uncovered the evidence that got him put back into the results. So that was kind of a reversal. And again, that's the one I'm most proud of. I would love to do more of that, if that comes up.
Well, that's a good point. Like, if you're listening to this and you get unjustifiably accused of cheating, and you want to hire somebody to right the wrong, I don't know what the fee is for that, but
I don't charge people. Other way, I wouldn't charge people to right the wrong. I didn't charge anything to Ryan for doing that. It was she had went public in the UK saying, hey, my son didn't cheat. Everyone believed he cheated. The initial evidence, it was one of those. Yeah, it looks like he cheated, but they had his start time wrong. So since they had his start time way later than it was, it looked like he ran a super fast split. correct the start time, then all the splits made sense. And there was a missplit as well. So it was a timing chip error. And by a photo on course, then I even went as far as looking on Google Street View to figure out where this photo was taken. That was a snapshot that someone sent in and say, hey, I think I saw him in this. And I was able to figure out what time and where the photo was taken to show he couldn't have started at the same time London said he started. So it got him back in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
so, I would love. I mean, that's the kind of thing I love doing. And I would much rather do that and that kind of analysis, no matter which way it goes. But yeah, I went into that thinking, boy, these splits don't look good for him, but that's kind of where I learned. Like my first instance of finding a timing malfunction that made it look like somebody cheated. When they really didn't.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't dig too deep into my results and find any sort of accusations of cheating against me.
Well, I know what I'm doing tonight. But no.
Looking up Coomer, there's a lot of 6-hour marathons in there, brother. You're going to have a good time. And then there's like some like outliers, in between and whatever. But I can assure you that I ran every step of the Tuscobia 160-mile winter ultra. So,
yeah. Well, it's funny. I got when I started getting publicity, there's one person in particular, Joel, he came from Let's Run. He'll comment on my blog, and he wrote on the Runner's World, a lot of Derek's results are in question as well. I'm like, really? Again, kind of look at my times. I mean, I've seen people cheat to 5-hour marathons, to try to cut the course because they're tired and they want to get their medal, like the Disney and stuff. I've been kind of written about that in general.
Well, I have one that happened to me. I think you wrote about this issue too. So I ran the Las Vegas Rock and Roll Marathon. After I was a pretty good ultra runner, and they have a cutoff in that thing. I think it's like a 5-hour cutoff, which is it's a little aggressive. And I ran with a friend of mine who's like a 250 marathoner, and then another friend who was maybe like a 4-hour marathoner. And we had fun. We stopped at a taco stand, and we had like all out, like they made tacos for us, and we stopped and got clamatos, and there was a lot of shenanigans. And the marathon fucked up and cut us off early. But as you know, in that marathon, they like give you the option to like get on the bus and then keep going and then get off again. And then they turned us around at like mile 14, and then they still gave us a medal and a finishing time. And it was very bizarre.
Yeah, I may look that one up because what I'm told, but I can't see how it would always work, is that I've seen results in the diverted category, but I don't see as many people in that category as I'm pretty sure were actually diverted. So that's kind of, I've written about that. They can give a medal to, I've kind of gotten off that, like, okay, don't say you're a marathoner if you didn't really run the marathon, but hey, if, you paid your $150 and Disney or Rock and Roll wants to give you a medal, that's their decision, but let's not put you in the official marathon results.
Well, I was pissed.
So I'd be curious to see how you show up officially.
I think I show up just as a finisher, but because of the fucking around that I did, and then the way the whole thing works out, I look like a 4:34 finisher, which if you look at my race history is totally believable.
Yeah.
But I only ran like 14 or 15 miles.
Yep.
So it's really bizarre.
Yeah, I've run Vegas enough. I ran Vegas 3 or 4 times before it was done at night, so there wasn't that.
Is this the old Vegas trick where they go to, or when they ran?
Well, it was a new Las Vegas marathon. It was, I think, it was run. It got before it was Rock and Roll. Okay. It was right. It was the years right before it was Rock and Roll. That's when I pretty much stopped running. So they didn't have that cutoff. And I was always the first one. I think was my fastest, which may have been a 5:05, and I probably could have broke 5 hours, but I got the timing marks were all off. So I kind of got, it's like, hey, I only got like 3 miles to go. I'm going forever before I see that. And it was kind of,
because before
my second ever marathon, which was 2 months after my first ever marathon, was my fastest. Then I just started running marathons because I liked running them, but my training wasn't there.
Yeah. Before it was the Rock and Roll marathon, and that year before it,
Divine.
Yeah, it used to be where you took a bus out to Jean, Nevada, and ran back to the airport and never even got close to the strip. The people in Las Vegas didn't even know there was a marathon. It was so far away from the strip.
Yeah, I think I did. I think the second year where Divine did it, then like the last year, I think Rock and Roll bought it just to get it running, but it was still, it may have actually been Divine, but it wasn't. It was kind of in limbo. It was like, okay, do they even have permits? Is it going to happen? Do they even know if they were going to have a race? So I ran that year, and then that was the. I think I ran. I didn't run the last year. It was during the morning. I ran the year before that. Because I remember I was actually in Vegas. The last year was in the morning. I missed a flight because I forgot about it, and I couldn't get to the airport. Yeah, I couldn't get to the airport in time. I didn't actually run it that year, but I was there.
It's a super good half marathon now, but the actual full marathon, it kind of sucks because there's a great half marathon course with just a stupid out and back in the middle of it. It's really weird.
Yeah. I thought about going back there this year, even if I was going to do one. So I'm not sure if I'm going to race what I'll be doing.
Well, if you go, we're going to have our eye on you. We're going to get a GoPro.
Oh my God, I'm going to have. You believe me, I'm going to have like 2 GPS watches on, and maybe a GoPro the whole way.
Are you going to be wearing
if I miss a split, and if I get diverted, that bib's going in the trash before I ever get near that finish line, because I know what'll happen if I show up in those results with anything questionable. So, I fear of running a marathon and having an actual timing malfunction, because it's funny, the last race I did, and I did North Coast 24, then I did the Columbus Marathon maybe a month after, which wasn't smart. I thought, I got through 24, I could muddle through Columbus, and Columbus, and then they've seen the course, but at the time, the half marathon and the full marathon were on the same exact course until the last maybe 200, 300 yards. So I was giving up at the. I'm like, I'm not going to be able, if I finish this, I'm going to be right around 6 hours. I said, I don't want to walk the next 13 miles. So I ran the legitimate half marathon, even though I had the full marathon bib. So, I didn't even take a medal or anything. But as I'm driving home, I'm getting, like with the live tracking, I'm getting updates on my time on Facebook that showed I got a Boston qualifying time. And I was driving home in the car. I'm getting congratulations. And like, everyone who knows me knows I can't do that. So I'm like, shit. But then it was never actually an official result. It was in the early days of, trying to do live tracking. And it had to be obviously with somebody else's time altogether. But I could see where it was addictive. Hey boy, everyone's, thanking me on social media. Let me claim this is real. Yeah, but that didn't happen.
Wow.
I'm driving home. That's not me. And I did check that I wasn't in the full marathon results. I do show up in the half marathon results, for that race. When I started this and talking about that, I'm like, I should probably make sure that I'm not showing a full marathon time of, 2 hours and 2.5 hours or whatever I did that half in.
Well, and to that point, I think that the cheating probably grows with that feeling that, like if you would have cheated in a marathon 15 years ago, there wouldn't have been 4,000 likes and all these comments and, put it on the Instagram and people on your strap. I mean, it would have just been, you would be limited to the people you could physically tell that you finished the marathon, and most people don't really give a shit,
Yeah, I think social media definitely is a double-edged sword. I think that, kind of it leads to a lot of that, but then when, it leads to a lot of the backlash as well. So, so then people use that for their likes and for that. But and there's a lot of cases, I don't know how many of my articles you've read and stuff, but there's some, I think they're valid that I would like, to focus on more than just hey, this Joe cut the course of this marathon. So I am, really do limit those articles. That's why I've kind of expanded my, do a more broad general topics. I'll write about races or, a race that, racer that canceled the race and never did refunds. I'm trying to give attention to that kind of stuff more. But there's the Wish runner triathlete who was trying to set a record for the most half Ironmans in a year, and he was. All the money he was getting was going to him, and it wasn't clear on the website. And so I felt I have no qualms about calling him out. I've heard from a lot of people who claiming they were scammed by this guy. And so once I wrote the article, the effort stopped, and they stopped taking donations and whatnot. So I don't feel this. But
now you're back again, though. See, but this is the same thing. I mean, and I hear what you're saying that maybe this guy has it coming more because he's taking people's money for charity and stealing the money.
Well, I stopped him from taking money from the charity, and it was obvious, no doubt.
But I go back to the same point we made before. If you said to me, Scott, you could get rid of one social evil, charity scammers or public humiliation, I'm still picking public humiliation. Just because somebody, it's not as extreme, obviously, but it's like shooting the abortion doctor, it's like the public humiliation is still wrong, even if it's targeted at someone who's doing something wrong. That's where you lose me.
No, that's where I completely disagree. Because again, it's okay. The public humiliation. I can understand your point from someone who gets publicly humiliated because they just cut a marathon and there was no other gain. I get your point of view there. But when you have somebody who is actively taking money from sponsors and from individuals and not just a little bit of money, I see no issue whatsoever writing about that. I mean, that's report. That's more of a new. That's reporting on on the news. That's stopping somebody who's taking advantage of others.
Right. And again,
if you have an issue with that, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not. But again, I'm
completely. And it's not just somebody. It's not just a little case. It's you're talking thousands of dollars.
Right. And again, I'm not saying
that you think that people are donating thinking it's going to make a wish where it's going in this guy's pocket to pay for him to do triathlons all year. No, that's bullcrap.
Right.
I have no issue. If what it takes to stop that guy is to call him out, then I have zero issue with that.
Okay, but we agree on everything about the fact that it's wrong. We agree that that if you write an article about it, it's reported. I don't have a problem with that either. What I'm talking about is the point at which the article goes viral. It's everywhere on the internet, and this guy is Jane now. If the rest of his life, when people Google him, they're going to find this.
And that particular guy, that guy deserves to be Jane.
He deserves to have his whole life ruined forever?
With what he did?
Yes, forever, his whole life.
But he's a con artist.
So if you write that article and then that guy puts a gun in his mouth and shoots himself in the head, you're not going to regret writing that article. It's not going to bother you one bit that this guy.
That's not.
I'm asking. I'm asking you. I'm not saying.
News. That's the same thing as a news reporting on anybody. Don't waste your money segments on your local news. Go and knock on the guy's door who's selling fake vacation packages. You need some of that to stop some of that.
I understand your argument. I see where it's coming from, but news just feels different because news doesn't have that viral sharing on Facebook, shaming. I mean, it might. A news article could, but not in the same way.
Just because of where I'm writing that. And again, I write those articles. Okay, so I wrote the article about Jane,
right,
which you say has that feel to it.
No. Stop. Because now I want to correct you because I'm not saying that your article has that feel to it.
But I'm not saying you aren't.
Okay.
But it gives you that feeling when I write an article about something.
No. That's not. You're wrong again. I got to push back. I don't want you to go down the wrong road. I'm not saying that when you write the article or the article itself gives me. I'm saying that, and when you write that. And then when you put something out into the universe that is like throwing chub in the ocean and that the sharks are going to go after it and then this woman's life's going to be ruined. I want to be very clear about that because I am not on this. I'm not saying Derek is out there trying to ruin Jane's life.
No, and that's not the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to be clear about that.
You'd be better if that story, if someone contacted the Miami Times or whatever, and they wrote about that. They wrote a story about that. You would be more okay with that.
Yes.
If they wrote a story about Jane cheating. Okay. My article Jane got the attention because of the hundreds of local papers that wrote that same story. But you're okay with those hundreds of local papers and national papers. They're the ones that wrote the stories that got her the attention.
Yeah.
So you said you're okay, but you're okay with all those stories, but you're not okay with me that I initially reported it.
Not you.
Do you see where I'm coming from?
Sure. I totally see where you're coming, and I get the analogy with the news completely. That I totally get.
It's not an analogy. You're okay with all those articles that were actually the articles that gave Jane the attention.
I'm okay with
nobody else. If nobody else picked up my story, it would have been a nothing. It would have been a very minor blip, and Jane would have got a disqualification, and she may have got kicked out of her running club, and that probably would have been it. It got the attention because these reputable news agencies decided it was newsworthy and wrote about it.
About your blog story.
They wrote about Jane,
but they got it. They got it from you,
right? And they could have very well got it if I decided to do nothing with it. They probably would have got it from the same person I got it from. It's very, very possibly, maybe or maybe not.
I'll give you that. It's possible. And again,
it's probably probable because I have people get ticked off when I'm not writing it. When I don't write something, I'll shoot it to everybody else to try to get it out there. If there's something that they think is worthy, and I just don't, feel it's,
right,
something that I would want to write about. So that's entirely. So that's my point. If you're okay with it being written at all, you shouldn't dismiss it because I wrote about it. Because this is the outlet I have, and it's the only outlet available to me. If you hate it, if you hate that anybody wrote an article about Jane, then okay. Then the criticism's fair. That I shouldn't have wrote about it, but be just as critical about the New York Times, the New York Post, USA Today, CNN, everywhere where that article was, BBC, it was overseas. It was in Women's Running even wrote about it after criticizing about, the running shaming and writing about cheaters. They wrote an article about it as well, and they still got,
But they all got it from you, though, right?
Yeah, and they all did it to get clicks. I didn't talk to them all. I talked to very few. I didn't interview with every single one of these people. They may have initially seen the stories from me, but they probably initially saw it from, the first national paper that picked it up, not necessarily directly from my blog, but
it all came from your blog originally.
I was the first they wrote about it, but then they, but all these websites, don't make any mistake about it, they're doing it for the clicks and for the viewers as well, especially one that says, in one breath says they're against the shaming, but then piles on a week after the fact to write a story about how this runner cheated.
So you think that if I brought that Jane story to the New York Times or to the USA Today, that they would have been the primary writer of that article? They would have just went out and used their name and
what happened? How it really happened was, I wrote the article. First, I got one from, I want to say it's the Miami New Times. I could be getting the newspaper wrong. Then he called me and said, "Hey, I want to write an article. Can I talk to you? Get a couple quotes?" And yes. And so then once he wrote the article, that got tons of traffic. And then if he never wrote the article, I don't think my blog probably wouldn't have gotten picked up. So yeah, it was a chain reaction. But if he would have wrote the initial article, it probably would have been the same thing.
So if I
and again, I did a lot of the research. They would have got part of it was, I got the watch face and I knew about the garment data and, the Strava and all that stuff. So,
So if I would have come to you and said, "Listen, I know you're about to hit send on this, but I just want you to know that this might get picked up by every newspaper in the country, might go viral, and this woman might end up having to disengage from all social media, vanish into the world, and we're never going to know the effect that this has, it could devastate her entire life," you'd say she has it coming and you'd hit send.
I would consider it hard. That's a tough theoretical question. It's
easier with the guy with the charity money, though.
Yeah,
it's easier with
the guy. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's more. That's cut and dry to me. Or what about the travel agent in France who convinced his race director friend to add his clients to the results of his race with Boston qualifying time so they could run Boston? And
I don't think
then a year later, he personally mules bibs over across the finish line so that he can sell guaranteed Boston qualifying bibs, make whatever thousands of dollars off these people.
I think those are all.
So the fact that I got that report on is,
they're all newsworthy, but I don't think that they're life destroying.
But I should be allowed to write about them.
Yeah,
I'm not destroying them. Just being on my blog shouldn't just destroy somebody. Again, this guy's business is based on he was falsely saying he was affiliated with the Boston Marathons and illegally selling guaranteed Boston bibs that he wasn't authorized to sell from the BAA.
So what do you say?
But since I'm a blogger and I have a reputation for my blog, I'm not allowed to write about that, but everybody else that's officially in media is allowed?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know.
Is that your thought? If I write about something and it gets picked up all over the place, then what I wrote about was newsworthy. Again, doesn't mean I have to be, comfortable with all the results and the.
I think the Times.
It's definitely tough. We could talk about that. It's a dilemma I face. Same with the charity bibs with the Adidas employees or the Reebok employees. That was again, that's a tough one. But again, in my mind, these runners pressured this charity, and again, the charity got most of the hit on that. But I've become kind of friendly with the person who was getting the most heat on the website. But I feel he was pressured by these employees to copy bibs so that they could run run this marathon. So and that's when I struggled with too. And I
think your position
what exactly happened to them, but it's tough. It's definitely tough. I think there's times where I regret the impact of some of the articles. So I will admit that there's times where I regretted it.
Well, and let me admit this. I'll say that 20 years ago when the New York Times would publish an article and you'd have to buy the paper to read it to see the article, would be a little different when they have than today when they might have a social media person that says, hey, this Jane's pretty good looking and it's kind of a cool story. Go on social media and share the shit out of it and try and make it go viral. That the news has kind of changed and maybe crossed over a line into
and I was a little naive on that. I mean, like, to your point, you had to, there's this pretty girl. She went to Harvard. She says in her profile she works for Huffington Post. That's why it went viral. I mean, and there was a lot more. There was just probably six or seven things.
Do you have any articles
that
about
converged?
You don't do articles about ugly people either, right? I mean, I haven't seen any.
No,
you factor that in. Come on.
That was no factor as far as what I did the article yesterday about the girl, the treadmill record for Guinness. And Guinness didn't ratify the record because of her record keeping. And I had some photos of her like leaning on a rail too, where I thought that should have gone into play too. But I purposely on my cover page, I had to find a picture of her that that I didn't think was too sexy of a picture. I mean, she had modeled underwear for God's sakes. I'm like, if I just wanted clicks, I would have found the most revealing picture I could have.
I've seen that underwear picture. That's all over the place too.
Yeah, and so I'd gone after the clicks. I mean, the one is in the article because it's the link. It's the one that they have on her GoFundMe page. So I thought that was appropriate, or not her change.org page. But I purposely didn't put that as the main one on my page, just because.
But you're also not writing articles about ugly obese people.
Try to get clicks because I know what happened. There was Jane, and there was another one. It's like, why is this one getting all the attention? I'm like, well, I was pretty naive to people are going to click.
Yeah.
So.
No,
I know we've been well over an hour.
We are. We're almost 2 hours now. So, and I don't want to keep you. But I just want to say to you one more time that I do understand your point of view, and that I don't believe that your intention is to put something into the universe that harms people. My criticism is that what you put in the universe can harm people, and when it does harm people, you make more money. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, and again, I'm not going to shy away from criticism, and I'm not going to call you a bully for disagreeing, but it's kind of, and again, we're kind of, and it's sad because there's real cases of real bullying. I think, a lot of cases and shaming, and may somebody have been bullied or shamed because of one of my articles.
Sure.
Probably.
Sure.
It had to probably happen when you get thousands or millions of people, like in Jane's case, seeing something. No matter what you write about, something, there's going to be, unfortunately, you're going to have some of that. So, there's, some of that.
But if this conversation helps you or someone in your position to think twice or to take an extra step to make sure someone's identity is protected, I think that helps too. And at the same time, I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and they're going to take your side because I think that I was fair, and they're going to say, you don't understand, Coomer, it's just the same thing as the news. Why are you making such a big deal about it? So, I think I treated you fairly, and I think I see your point of view as well.
No, I think so. And again, I'll anybody about those. I enjoy it. I don't want to just talk about the people who are, going to be patting me on the back and, and agreeing with me. And that's where, I think in some cases, if you write anything just disagreeing with, with somebody, and there's a particular blogger who you probably forget who I'm referencing, you can't disagree without all of a sudden, having bullying and shaming posts going up all over the Instagram and the Twitter.
Yeah.
That's not bullying. It's like if, someone makes their living with, or makes, again, that's not getting how much money they're making, I guess, and pay myself. But again, if someone's putting themselves out there with an anti-bullying and anti-shaming platform, but they came on to the, shaming is how they became popular in the first place, I think it's a valid criticism.
Yeah.
Sure. So I hate that people use that in every instance, and when there are some instances where it should be a concern.
Right. And I want to say that the bulk of what I would consider to be the public humiliation and shaming is happening not by you, but by other people with the product that you make.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done, I think I've been as clear as I can. And when I see that, I'll call people out and I'll block them from commenting and post, hey, please don't do this. Where that's been kind of come the other way when I wrote about the blogger. I reached out to her, say, hey, I have an instance where somebody was contacted by one of your followers. Somebody actually contacted a boss of somebody that was critical of this blogger. And I said, hey, can you maybe say something? And I never got a response from her.
Yeah.
So I'll do it both ways. I'll be fair. And, I reached out to her, say, hey, can you maybe say something? And again, it's in my mind with that particular blogger, if it's against her, as it suits her. I think she's is a little selective in how she defines the shaming and bullying.
And kudos for you for coming on the show too. You know, like you didn't have to do this.
No, not consider. I didn't have I didn't have the best day. I'm like, I can just cancel, but no, I don't want to do that. So, again, I have no problem. No problem debating that topic. I enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll shoot you a message before this goes out, so you kind of know when it's going to come out. And listeners, go ahead and comment all you want. If people want to get a hold of you, or if people want to see, could you just give us your, where the site is and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, just go marathoninvestigation.com. If you want to follow some of the conversation on Facebook, Facebook Marathon Investigation. If you need to email me for any reason, want to tell me I'm a jerk or anything else, it's Derek, DEREK at marathoninvestigation.com. And
don't send him the fucking investigate Coomer stuff, all right? Because we're done with that now. You'll probably get a couple of the smart asses that listen to this saying,
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Maybe I could do a tongue-in-cheek article on you with your approval.
You could write anything you want about me. That's fine.
All right.
Thanks so much. Have a good night. I hope you find a good new job soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Well, there you go. Marathon Investigation. I mean, sorry about the sound quality. It was kind of shitty, but I think I was fair to him. I think that he was pretty straight up with me. But I don't know. I just think about that girl. I'm trying to get one of the girls that did the subject of an article to come on the show. And the problem is they say you're just going to make it worse. One of these girls is really freaked out and she has deleted all of her social media. It's not Jane, it's someone else. But I'm doing everything I can to try to get them on because I think it would be really cool for us to hear the other side of it. And that's my life is ruined over this blog post side of it. And that's the part that really disgusts me. But he was a good guy. And if you agree or disagree, go ahead and reach out and let us know. But I thought it was an interesting conversation. I hope you did too. And if you want to contact the show, you can contact the show at 10junkmiles@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. We're at 10junkmiles on Twitter. I'm at Scotty Coomer. And that was 10 Junk Miles.